Before we begin, let me ask you something personal. Have you ever felt like your whole life is a list of problems to solve? And the moment you fix one, 3 more show up? That's where Clara's story begins. Clara was the type of woman everyone admired on the outside. She had the neat apartment, the stable job, the polite smile that never left her lips. But if you looked just a little closer, you'd see it, the weight pressing down on her chest every morning. Bills piling up, emails unanswered, a boss who never noticed her effort, a partner who seemed more distant every day. It wasn't one big tragedy. It was the 1,000 cuts of ordinary life, and each cut whispered the same sentence, "You're not enough." She woke up already tired. She carried her phone like a lifeline, scrolling before her feet even touched the floor. Problems, problems, problems. It was like being inside a house where every window showed another storm. And if you're listening right now thinking, "That's me, that's my life on repeat," pause here for 1 second. Take a breath and subscribe. Not for me, for you. Because if Clara's story feels familiar, then this is your story too. And the next chapters might be the very seed that changes your field. Clara thought she was managing. She thought surviving meant she was doing fine. But her body started telling the truth her mind refused to admit. Headaches that lingered, anxiety that buzzed in her chest like a trapped bee, sleepless nights where her heart pounded, so loud she could swear the neighbors could hear. Her doctor told her, stress. Her friends told her, take a vacation. Her mother told her, you worry too much. But none of them lived inside Clara's skin. None of them knew what it was like to look at every corner of your life and see only cracks. She tried what everyone tries: planners, lists, self-help books. She even bought crystals once because someone said they might calm her energy. But the truth was simple. Clara wasn't living. She was firefighting, and the fires never ended. One evening, she found herself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep again. Her mind was rehearsing the same painful melody. What if I fail at work tomorrow? What if my partner leaves me? What if the bills drown me? What if? She didn't notice her breath had become shallow. She didn't notice her shoulders were clenched so tightly they ached. She only noticed one thing: her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. That night, for the first time, Clara whispered something into the darkness. I can't do this anymore. And that whisper wasn't weakness. It was the seed of honesty. The next day, life gave her a mirror. She arrived late to work. Coffee spilled on her shirt. A client complained. And during lunch break, she sat alone in the park, eyes burning with unshed tears. That's when she noticed an old woman feeding pigeons nearby. Nothing unusual, just crumbs falling, birds gathering. But the woman hummed a melody, soft and peaceful, like she had all the time in the world. Clara envied her peace. And maybe the woman felt Clara's eyes because she turned, smiled, and said, Dear, don't frown so much. Remember, the sowing is free, but the harvest is mandatory. 7 words. They hit Clara harder than any lecture, any book, any therapy session. Because suddenly she realized she had been sowing problems all along. Every thought was a seed of fear. Every complaint was a seed of scarcity. Every sleepless night was a seed of anxiety. And of course, her field was full of weeds. She had been planting them. That night, Clara couldn't stop hearing the old woman's words. The harvest is mandatory. She saw her life like a garden overrun. And for the first time, she wondered, what if I stop feeding the weeds? It didn't feel easy. In fact, it felt impossible. But somewhere inside, she felt the tiniest flicker of courage, a match lighting in a dark room. And though she didn't know it yet, that flicker was the beginning of everything. Clara thought she could handle it. After all, wasn't that what everyone said? Be strong. Keep pushing. Don't let them see you break. So she wore her smile like armor. She kept working late. She said, I'm fine when she was anything but. But there's something no one tells you about problems. They don't just live in your calendar or your bank account. They live in your body. The day came when Clara's body finally refused to carry the weight. It started small, a sharp ache in her stomach. She blamed the cheap sandwich from the night before, but then her chest tightened. Her breath grew shallow. Her palms were sweaty, her head dizzy. At her desk, she froze. For a terrifying moment, she thought, "Is this a heart attack?" Her coworkers didn't notice. Emails kept pinging. Phones kept ringing. The world spun on while Clara's body screamed. She stumbled to the bathroom, locked the stall, and pressed her back against the cold wall tiles. Her heart was racing like it was trying to escape her chest. She slid to the floor, tears blurring her eyes. And there, whispering to herself, she admitted it again. "I can't live like this." That breakdown wasn't weakness. It was truth, breaking through denial. Clara finally saw what she had refused to see. Focusing on problems wasn't solving them. It was multiplying them. Every thought of fear was feeding fear. Every repetition of worry was watering worry. Every what if was carving deeper grooves of anxiety into her brain. She realized she had been doing what farmers never would, planting weeds on purpose, then crying when the harvest was bitter. And the scariest part? Her body was proof. Her sleepless nights, her pounding heart, her panic, all of it was her field in bloom. She wasn't just tired. She was poisoning herself. That night, Clara didn't turn on the TV to drown out her thoughts. She sat in silence. And silence terrified her, because silence forced her to hear the noise inside. She remembered the old woman's words. "The sowing is free, but the harvest is mandatory." Clara whispered them aloud, as if testing the taste. Her voice cracked. But for the first time, she wasn't running from the mirror. She was facing it. Then a thought struck her. If I planted all these weeds, maybe I can plant something else. It sounded naive, childish even, but her whole being clung to it like a rope in a flood. So Clara did something radical in its simplicity. She wrote down 3 things she wanted to feel. Not have, not own, feel. Peace, energy, love. She looked at the words, shaky in her handwriting, and laughed bitterly. How could a woman drowning in problems dare to ask for peace? But still, she left the paper by her bed. A seed, small as it was. The next morning, something unusual happened. She woke up anxious, as always. Her brain was already running its usual track. The bills, the boss, the weight. But then her eyes fell on the paper. Peace, energy, love. And she realized she had been feeding everything else but that. No wonder her harvest was bitter. That day, instead of reaching for her phone first, she sat up and closed her eyes. She took one deep breath, then another. Her heart still raced, but for the first time, she gave it space. It didn't fix everything. The problems were still there. But for a brief second, she felt something she hadn't in years: choice. Over the following weeks, Clara failed more times than she succeeded. She still scrolled when she felt lonely. She still drowned in worry at night. She still overreacted to her boss's tone. But in tiny cracks, light began to seep in. One morning, walking to work, she noticed the sky was clear, crisp, impossibly blue. And instead of worrying about the meeting ahead, she whispered, "Thank you." One evening, when her partner came home distracted, instead of spiraling into, "He doesn't love me," she asked softly, "Are you tired today?" These were seeds, tiny, fragile, almost invisible, but every seed counts. And then came the moment she knew, deep down, that something was truly changing. It was during another storm of problems. The electricity bill arrived higher than ever. Her boss piled work on her again. Her partner canceled dinner last minute. Old Clara would have collapsed. But this time, she caught herself. She placed her hands on the table, breathed deeply, and said aloud, "I can't control the storm, but I can choose what I plant in it." It was shaky, almost theatrical. But it was real. Her field was shifting. And here's where her story becomes bigger than her. Because Clara's choice is the same choice you face. Will you keep planting fear, anger, and self-doubt? Or will you dare to plant peace, joy, and self-respect, even if it feels impossible at first? Because make no mistake, the harvest is mandatory. And the field you wake up in tomorrow will be the echo of the seeds you plant today. Clara didn't wake up one morning magically transformed. No lightning bolt of clarity. No sudden new life. Change, she discovered, was quieter than that. It was stubborn, subtle, patient, like water carving stone. The first test came on a Tuesday. Her boss called her into the office, slammed a file on the desk and said, "Fix this mess by Friday." Old Clara would have panicked. Her chest would tighten, her hands would shake. Her brain would spiral into, "I'm failing, I'm not enough." But this time, she remembered the paper by her bed. Peace, energy, love. She sat there staring at the file and whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "Peace." It didn't make the work disappear, but it slowed her pulse. It gave her a sliver of space between stimulus and reaction. And in that space, she found power. Here's the thing most people miss. Problems don't vanish when you raise your frequency, but their weight does. Because when Clara chose peace, the file stopped being a monster. It became paper, work, nothing more. Her energy, once eaten by fear, became fuel for focus. And something incredible happened. She finished early. Not because she was smarter, but because she wasn't drowning in noise. That night, she sat with tea in her hands and realized something she had never felt before. She wasn't defined by her boss. She wasn't defined by the file. She wasn't defined by her problems. She was defined by her frequency. And for the first time, she wasn't vibrating panic. She was humming calm. The next shift came in her relationships. Her partner came home, distracted as usual. He dropped his bag, muttered something, and scrolled his phone. Old Clara would have snapped. "Why don't you ever listen to me? Why don't you care?" The argument would spiral, resentment would grow. But new Clara paused. She breathed. And instead of reacting to the noise, she tuned to the signal. Love. She reached out, touched his arm, and said softly, "Rough day?" He looked up, surprised. His shoulders dropped. For the first time in weeks, he actually talked. The wall cracked, and Clara saw it. Sometimes love doesn't mean demanding more. It means being the calm in someone else's storm. One morning, walking to work, Clara noticed a homeless man on the corner. She had seen him 100 times before, always with quick pity, sometimes with irritation. But this time, something in her shifted. She bought an extra coffee and handed it to him. The man looked at her like she had given him gold. "Bless you," he said, voice trembling. Clara walked away, tears stinging her eyes. It wasn't about charity. It was about frequency, because every act of kindness was planting another seed. And Clara knew, you can't plant love without harvesting more of it. But raising frequency isn't all sunshine. The universe has a way of testing your vibration. And Clara's biggest test came on a Saturday. Her landlord raised the rent. Her car broke down. And her mother called with bad news about her health. The triple hit sent Clara reeling. She sat on her kitchen floor, surrounded by bills and broken pieces of her confidence. Her old pattern whispered, "See? Nothing changes. You were foolish to hope." But this time, Clara caught the whisper mid-sentence. She slammed her hand on the floor and shouted, "No, I'm not going back." Her voice echoed in the empty kitchen. It was shaky, raw, almost embarrassing, but it was a declaration. She stood up, wiped her tears, and said, "I can't control the storm, but I can control my frequency." That night she wrote in her journal, "I'm not my bills. I am not my problems. I am not my fear." She underlined it 3 times, and then she added, "I am peace. I am energy. I am love." It felt ridiculous, like a child's game. But as she wrote, something shifted inside. Her chest loosened. Her breath deepened. And she realized the harvest doesn't come from one grand gesture. It comes from the stubborn planting of seeds, again and again, even when the soil looks barren. Here's where science meets spirit, because Clara's brain was literally rewiring. Every time she chose gratitude over panic, her neurons carved a new path. Every time she paused to breathe instead of react, her nervous system reset its baseline. Every time she planted peace, her body learned, this is safe, this is possible. And that, my friend, is the real miracle. Not that problems vanish, but that you transform in the face of them. Now let me ask you, What are you planting? Because if Clara's story whispers anything to you, it's this: frequency is contagious. The way you choose to vibrate changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone you touch. You've seen it. The anxious coworker who infects the whole office. The bitter friend who drains the room. But also, the calm presence who steadies everyone. The joyful one who lights the table. So tell me, who do you want to be? Clara wasn't perfect. She still stumbled. Still overreacted sometimes. Still doubted. But every day, she chose again. And that's what raising your frequency really means. It's not about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about planting, even when the harvest feels far away. Because eventually, inevitably, the field will bloom. Clara didn't notice the exact moment her life began to bloom. Because harvest doesn't arrive like fireworks. It arrives like sunrise. Slow, steady, impossible to ignore once it's there. She was standing at the grocery store, choosing fruit when she realized something unusual. Her chest wasn't tight. Her mind wasn't racing. She wasn't rehearsing old arguments in her head. She was just there, at peace, present. And for the first time in years, she caught herself humming. The old Clara used to measure life in problems. The new Clara began to measure it in moments. The laughter with her partner, now warmer. The steady calm at work, no longer shaken by deadlines. The quiet joy of knowing she could breathe, even when storms came. She saw the world through different eyes, and the world began to answer differently. One evening she got a call. Her mother's health had improved. Not a miracle cure, but progress. Her boss, once impossible, now praised her work. And the man on the corner, the one she'd given coffee to, waved at her like an old friend. The seeds were sprouting, not all at once, not in perfect rows, but life was answering the frequency she had insisted on broadcasting. But here's the truth Clara wanted to whisper to anyone who would listen. The harvest is not automatic. It takes courage to live it. Because when blessings arrive, fear can whisper, "Don't trust it. It won't last." And sometimes we sabotage the very abundance we prayed for. But Clara didn't. This time she stood tall and let herself receive. She chose to believe that love was not a visitor. It was home. That peace was not a rare guest. It was her nature. That joy was not fragile. It was fertile. And that was her greatest act of courage. So now I'll ask you, what would your life look like if you stopped fearing the harvest and started living it? If you trusted that the seeds you plant, in thoughts, in words, in small daily choices, are not wasted? If you believed that every boundary, every act of self-respect, every moment of presence was a deposit in the field of your future? Because Clara's story is not unique. It's human. It's yours. Here's my challenge for you. For the next 7 days, live as if your harvest has already begun. Wake up and thank the day as if the blessing already landed. Treat yourself as if you are already loved. Speak as if abundance already flows. Do it not as fake positivity, but as frequency. Because the universe doesn't answer your fear. It answers your hum. Clara's final lesson is simple. Life is not about avoiding storms. It's about planting in rain, waiting in faith, and daring to harvest when the sun finally shines. So don't shrink when joy knocks. Don't doubt when peace arrives. Don't sabotage when love appears. Have the courage to live the harvest. Because in the end, you don't just reap what you sow. You reap what you vibrate. And if you've been planting peace, energy, and love, your field is already blooming. If this story whispered to you, if you felt your own seeds in Clara's journey, then subscribe right now. Not for me, not for numbers. For you, as your quiet vow that you'll keep planting what you want to live. Because the harvest is not tomorrow. It begins the moment you believe it.